Welcome to the chaos. I'm Jill Savage. Today is Wednesday, July 31st. Acting Secret Service Director Ronald Rowe testified yesterday in a Senate oversight hearing on the Trump assassination attempt. During his time, Senator Ron Johnson found some key differences in the story provided by Rowe and the law enforcement personnel present that day.
One of my preliminary findings is that the Secret Service did not attend the 9 o'clock briefing the day of the event. In your testimony, you said that a site briefing was conducted with Secret Service personnel and law enforcement partners supporting the event. Those both can't be true. So local law enforcement do not believe Secret Service was present at the 9 o'clock briefing. Were they or were they not?
So, Senator, with respect to the snipers that went on national television and gave an interview and said that they did not get a briefing from the Secret Service, they were supporting through mutual aid, and our personnel briefed the tactical team leader was leading that element that was providing this counter sniper.
So, Acting Director Rowe, you said that the Secret Service provides explicit instructions to the locals. Were explicit instructions provided to cover the roof of the AGR building and locals just not follow it, or were those explicit instructions not provided?
It's my understanding what was communicated is that the locals had a plan and that they had been there before.
Here to discuss his testimony and the investigation into the shooting is Wisconsin Senator Ron Johnson, alongside Matthew Peterson, editor-in-chief of Blaze Media. Senator, thanks so much for joining us. Do you think that Acting Director Rowe helped clarify some of the important details of the Trump assassination attempt, or is it something that his predecessor didn't, and we're still all just looking for some answers here?
I think his answer was clear as mud. I asked him a simple question. Did the Secret Service attend the 9 o'clock briefing? And he goes on and talks about some other snipers being briefed by somebody. No, he did not provide clarity to just basically any situation. The fiery exchanges with Senator Hawley, Senator Cruz, none of those should have occurred because they shouldn't have even had to ask the question. Those answers should have been provided days after the assassination attempt. Here we are 18 days out, and we just really do not have the kind of clarity that we should have in terms of exactly what happened, what was the spectacular failure, who is ultimately responsible, or how many people are responsible for, again, the spectacular failure.
Senator, yeah, exactly. It's been 18 days. What are the top 2 or 3 things, the particular things that you think are at the tip of the spear that haven't been answered yet?
Well, in the Wednesday briefing following the assassination, with Director Wray and Director Cheadle, they were all concerned about conspiracy theories taking hold and spreading. And so in our briefing with Acting Secretary Rowe last Thursday, I made the point, listen, if you don't want conspiracy theories being spread, tell us what you know. If something is out there on the internet and it's wrong, correct it immediately. But they're not doing that. So, for example, one of the rumors out there is that Secret Service snipers had Matthew Crooks in their sight for minutes, asked for permission to take him out. The permission was denied. Now, I asked that of Acting Director Rowe in the secure briefing. He said that wasn't the case. He didn't really clarify it. I mean, we still don't know at what point did those Secret Service snipers first notice Crooks on the roof. We still don't know that. We know they took him out after he fired off 8 shots. But we did find out from local law enforcement, for example, that by 5:54, Secret Service sniper had the picture of Crooks, knew that individual, that Crooks was at the AGR building. So that was 26 minutes before the first shots were fired. Again, that photo was taken at 5:14, almost an hour before the first shots were fired. So what happened in that 26 minutes from when the sniper received the photo and his location? What were they doing? Why weren't they continuously scanning the AGR building? I've just seen a video on the internet taken by somebody in the crowd where you can easily see somebody running around at the ridge of the roof, and that's Crooks. So the crowd saw him. Why didn't Secret Service snipers see him?
To your point there, is it fair for Secret Service to go through, again, the answer is as clear as mud, is it fair for Secret Service to blame local police for the roof being left completely wide open that day?
Well, if they're going to blame them, they better tell us everything they did to provide instructions, whether or not they actually attended the 9 o'clock security briefing, or they just set the perimeter and say, you guys handle that. Again, if that's all they did is you guys take care of that and we got confidence in you, I don't see how they can really blame them. They're in charge. They should have recognized that AGR roof was a true vulnerability and made sure that it was covered. Explicitly given instructions to whoever they assigned that roof to, that roof was covered 100%. So this could never happen. Again, this is a spectacular failure. Acting Director Rowe says he can't defend this. Well, he didn't do a very good job of providing us the answers in terms of exactly what happened.
Senator, one of the most disturbing things that we've heard from many people coming forward in the last few days is that the fact pattern of what we know certainly doesn't rule out that this person was groomed and potentially point some people in that direction. Given that he had an encrypted phone, rangefinder, drone, he scouted out the location. Do you have any thoughts about that?
We just don't know enough. Okay, so we had encrypted applications. Others weren't encrypted. The FBI, the deputy director, was, again, his testimony. On one hand, he said applications show him to be anti-Semite, anti-immigrant. And then Senator Blackburn was talking about other apps showing him to be pro-immigration. What is it? I thought it was very strange that Deputy Director Abate talked about that they're investigating this as a assassination attempt, obviously, but also an act of domestic terrorism. What's that about? Remember, the FBI views half of America, the Biden administration views half of America as potential domestic terrorists because we voted for Donald Trump and not President Biden. Are they already politicizing this assassination attempt as well? Are they trying to hang the assassination attempt on a MAGA Republican? I mean, I have no idea. It makes no sense to me that they're investigating as both an assassination attempt and an act of domestic terrorism. That's just bizarre. I have no explanation, and Deputy Director Abate did not answer that question to my satisfaction either.
So what's the solution for all of this? If we go through and look at it with these agencies, we know that the FBI isn't going to come forth with all of the information as we've seen the way that they've been treating Donald Trump historically. So what is going to happen with what to do this with moving forward? Excuse me.
Well, there are a number of ways we can proceed. I know former CBP Commissioner Mark Morgan suggested an independent commission. Certainly, we're going to be doing oversight. Now, the House has got assigned their task force. The committee I used to chair, that's now chaired by Senator Peters, the two chairmen and the two ranking members of the full committee and the permanent subcommittee investigation, we've joined in a joint bipartisan investigation. I appreciate both Chairman Peters and Blumenthal pressing Acting Director Rowe to make Secret Service personnel available not in weeks, but in days for transcribed interviews. I mean, we do not have the investigatory capability and capacity to do what the FBI can do. So we're going to have to rely on their investigators. They've already done interviews with some 400 individuals, more than 400 individuals. They need to make those 302s, those reports of those transcribed interviews available to Congress for our oversight. They need to be transparent in their investigation as well. Instead of what they always do is, well, we have an active investigation, so we can't share any information whatsoever. So they have to be way more open, way more transparent. And I look to the points that former Governor Rick Scott, now Senator Rick Scott, made. He was governor during some horrific terrorist attacks, mass shootings. And what they did is they held daily, sometimes multiple briefings per day to inform the public. Now, the public is intelligent enough to realize that early briefings are going to be incomplete, maybe inaccurate, they're preliminary, but you have greater confidence when you're telling people what you know when you find it out. The federal agencies are just, it's ingrained on them that they're not responsible to Congress, which means they're not responsible to the American people, that they don't feel they're accountable, and that's how they act. It's completely contrary to what would be good for them in terms of restoring confidence of the American people in them.
Certainly agree with that. And I know that our audience is very happy, everything that you're doing and pushing, because I also know our audience doesn't trust the federal government at all to investigate itself. And I want to ask about Homeland Security Director Mayorkas in this, because as far as I know, I mean, speaking of government investigating himself, there's still a January 6th report about the failures of the Secret Service that hasn't come out, that he's sitting on. Where is he in all this? I mean, clearly he's partially to blame, perhaps, right? Is that on the table? Where has he been?
He is AWOL. Again, we don't know who denied Secret Service protection for example, RFK Jr., whose uncle and father were murdered in assassinations. Who denied? And again, first the Secret Service spokesman said nobody denied. Then you have the article by the New York Times and the Washington Post saying, no, Secret Service did deny enhanced protection for President Trump, for Mar-a-Lago. So what is the truth there? And of course, Mayorkas has just been absent from the scene. In the end, President Biden is ultimately responsible, but when it comes to Secret Service, it really is Mayorkas. And we haven't heard from him at all. And again, that's one of the concerns of the public, is that the Secret Service protection was partisan, that they provided adequate security for President Biden and the First Lady, but did not provide adequate security for President Trump. And certainly not RFK Jr., who they denied Secret Service coverage until this assassination attempt, which I think was a complete scandal. I was calling for Secret Service protection months ago, but Biden was playing politics, making sure that RFK Jr.'s campaign was bled of those funds to provide his own security. Again, pure politic play, and really risking RFK Jr.'s life. He had a couple pretty scary instances of security breaches, and yet the Biden administration, until the assassination attempt, denied him Secret Service coverage. So it sure appears that the Secret Service protection was meted out on a highly partisan, highly political basis.
Senator Johnson, thanks so much for joining us today. We really appreciate your time and everything that you're doing for this cause.
Have a good day.
Donald Trump takes fire at a black journalist event and returns it after this. Earlier today, Donald Trump sat down for a Q&A at the National Association of Black Journalists Conference. Here to discuss is Delano Squires, BlazeTV contributor with Fearless, with Jason Whitlock, opinion contributor for Blaze News, and Heritage Foundation research fellow. So Delano, we're going to start with watching the very first question that was lobbied at Donald Trump today.
You have told 4 congresswomen of color who were American citizens to go back to where they came from. You have used words like animal and rabbit to describe black district attorneys. You've attacked black journalists, calling them a loser, saying the questions that they ask are, quote, stupid and racist. You've had dinner with a white supremacist at your Mar-a-Lago resort. So my question, sir, now that you are asking black supporters to vote for you, why should black voters trust you after you have used language like that?
Well, first of all, I don't think I've ever been asked a question so in such a horrible manner. First question. You don't even say, hello, how are you? Are you with ABC? Because I think they're a fake news network, a terrible network.
Delano, break that down for me. How do you handle that?
I mean, I think he handled it in true Trump fashion. I think President Trump tends to mirror the type of interaction that he gets from journalists. So if he feels they're rude, I think he responds in kind. If he feels that they're complimentary, he responds in kind. The question certainly was loaded. It didn't come out. She could have just easily said, President Trump, your presence here is controversial to some, but why is it that you chose to come, and what message, is it that you want to offer to black voters? But obviously the question was loaded with a lot of assumptions, and I think he responded in kind. Obviously the crowd had a strong reaction, and I think everyone involved in the interaction benefited from it because it only reinforced the things that they're trying to get across. The journalist got to appear tough, asking tough questions to the president, holding his feet to the fire. He got to, again, play tough to his base, and the audience got a good laugh out of it.
And we saw that Donald Trump was giving Kamala Harris a hard time for not attending the conference. He put on Truth Social that they told me crazy Kamala Harris, that could not even attend this event with Zoom. It's not allowed or acceptable. She declined. He says, I am getting ready to land in Chicago and ready to be there. Now she's telling me that she's going to do this on Zoom. What's going on here? So Delano, how did Harris get away with not showing up to this conference? Donald Trump is going to take time out of his schedule. How does Kamala get away with it with these voters?
Well, to be fair, I'm not sure what type of scheduling conflict she had, right? So I can't go into it that much. I do think it's interesting that he's trying out Crazy Kamala as a label. I can already see how that would land at NABJ. And I think one of the things that's important to note here is that I think Trump supporters would say that President Trump treats everyone the same regardless of who they are. And in that sense, I think that's a characteristic that is to be admired. But particularly for the black voters who are critical of him, his use of Crazy Kamala, saying she's low IQ, saying things that are personal in nature, they use that as evidence of a racist motive and intent with respect to how he speaks about her as his opponent. So it's one of those things where certain things I think are lost in translation. It remains to be seen whether she will actually do the Zoom town hall. I read something on Twitter that said at one point, one of the people who was trying to organize this even floated the idea of a surrogate, whether Barack Obama, Oprah Winfrey, or even Megan Thee Stallion coming in her place. But it remains to be seen how they will actually handle a conversation with her and whether they'll actually do the Zoom call.
One thing that we do know about Kamala's schedule is last night she was in Atlanta, Georgia. And you know what? See if you notice anything different about her voice here.
And you all helped us win in 2020, and we're going to do it again in 2024. Yes, we will. Yes, we will. So let's get right.
It's clearly election season because the fake accents are coming out. Delano, what is going on with Kamala as she goes down there to the South trying to connect with the voters on this?
So I can already see how the Trump camp would spin this. They'll probably say, Kamala the chameleon or something to that effect. I will say this, right? This is reminiscent of the Hillary Clinton, I ain't no ways tired, and other politicians who've done this. But again, let me give you the other side of it, which is many, particularly Kamala Harris supporters, will say, well, she's just code switching, and in that they mean she is affecting a particular style of speech that comes natural to her, but that comes out in certain environments with people she's comfortable around. And if you know anyone who's bilingual, or even some, my wife is from Texas. When she's up north, and when I met her, she certainly didn't speak with a Texas accent. When she's around her family from Texas or Louisiana, it comes out more readily. Now, I don't know if Kamala Harris ever speaks this way organically with people when she's around them, or whether this is, again, a Hillary Clinton sort of incident, because I don't think that Hillary Clinton is used to speaking like a Black Baptist preacher from South Carolina. So I'm not sure which one of these this is, but it certainly looks as if this is sort of a Clinton-esque attempt to appeal to voters.
Yeah, see, here's the problem, Delano. It's certainly understandable when people say, oh, code switching, but it's become this excuse for something that's very strange. And, maybe there's something we don't know about Kamala and her background, but I don't think it's Kamala from the block, or from the hood. This is someone who had very, accomplished family, and she pretends over and over again that she's it's a class thing. She pretends that she was hanging out, right, smoking weed and listening to Snoop, as she said, which is a little, timing doesn't quite work for her. Timing does not quite work. So this faking it, where do you think that does come from? Let's say with Hillary, why would someone do that?
Well, I think with Hillary is a little clearer, right? So when she goes on the Breakfast Club, in 2016, it says she carries hot sauce in her bag, and they said in real time that sounds like people are going to say that you're pandering. And she says, well, is it working? I think it's fairly clear, that what it is that she was trying to accomplish. But again, identity is a very interesting and sort of delicate thing, right? Because a person can appear to be, it's like a prism. When you turn it, it is going to refract and reflect light in different ways, right? So I'm not, again, I don't know Kamala Harris personally. I don't know her personal background like that, but I'm sure her surrogates would say, look, she went to a historically black college, right? Mm-hmm. She's an AKA, she's in a black sorority. And when she's around other black people, this is the way that she's used to speaking. When she can sort of metaphorically let her hair down and relax and the camera's not on, they would say this is the way she's used to speaking. It's just that you get to see it now in front of however many thousands of people were there. So I'm the type of person where I try not to assign motives to someone unless I can clearly see what's going on. And it's quite possible that, again, this is just her code switching. Or, as I said, she could be doing sort of a Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama mashup where she's trying to affect, put on a certain accent to try to appeal more to certain voters. We'll know if she starts to do the wobble or the electric slide at the next campaign stop, then maybe that'll be a sign.
We'll be watching for it. Thanks so much for joining us, Delano.
Thank you.
And as Donald Trump was saying today, he said, you know what? I've known Kamala Harris as Indian. Now, all of a sudden, she wanted to go out there and be black. But when we come back, Chris Bedford will join us to talk about Kamala Harris and her crazy campaign strategies when we return. The first week of Kamala Harris's presidential campaign has been pretty weird. It's been white dudes for Harris and then Kamala slipping into her fake accent in Atlanta. So here to analyze Harris's bizarre strategy is Chris Bedford, senior editor for politics and DC correspondent for Blaze Media. So Chris, how could Kamala attempt to jam her primary through right before the election campaign and energize all of these different voters and use all of these weird strategies that we've been seeing from her?
They are weird strategies. I actually think that weird is a fairly cutting remark. Maybe it's because I was probably a weird junior high kid and a weird high schooler that when you heard that from the popular girl, it might cut you deep. I just don't think it really works on Donald Trump so well. And to see the Southern accent kind of just really doubles down on the feeling that we might be witnessing Hillary Clinton 2.0. Now, I'm not saying that this means that she's going to lose to Donald Trump, but she very well could win. This is a real race now. But the awkwardness, the strangeness, the pretend accents were really just part of Hillary's personality, the bad, terrible dancing. And the funny thing is, if you compare that with Donald Trump, it couldn't be more different. And I was surprised to learn this. When I got to New Hampshire in 2016, it was Iowa first and then New Hampshire to cover those races. Walking into that race, I had heard that Donald Trump was the kind of guy who was an aloof billionaire in his own bubble. He's not the kind of guy to shake hands or kiss babies. It was just kind of a total stereotype. It turned out it couldn't be further from the truth. Talking to the people who worked behind the scenes in the restaurants and the bars and the diners or at the television channels, you learned which of the politicians portrayed themselves as nice guys, turned out to actually be huge jerks, and which people were called huge jerks who actually were really nice, and one of those was Trump. And I would notice that when you go to a rally that's got working class folks, most politicians would take off their jacket and tie and roll up their sleeves. And then that same politician would go to a middle class area for a fundraiser and they'd put on a suit, because I guess that's the middle class thing to do. And then when they go to the wealthy country club areas, they would again get rid of the tie, get rid of the suit jacket, and they'd put on a vest over their shirt. But everywhere you went, whether Donald Trump was in a nice area of town, whether he was at a biker rally where most of the guys had Vietnam gear on, he was in a Brioni suit with a red trucker hat on that said, "Make America Great Again." He's kind of the opposite politician. He's extremely comfortable in his own skin. He's comfortable on TV, and he doesn't really try to pretend for anyone.
Chris, we've had way too much fun with this in the break here, so I want to bring you in. Do you have a fake accent that you slip into as well?
No, I don't have any fake accents. Actually, sometimes when I'm disciplining the boy, I switch to Scottish. I tell him his mother won't protect him. Generally, the only time my accent ever comes out, and I've got a Boston accent, is in traffic or when I'm very upset. It comes out pretty quickly, and sometimes folks are surprised to hear it. But I'm thoroughly mid-Atlantic. How about you two?
I was going to press you on that because I suspected that the Boston maybe came out in moments of high passion.
I'm mad.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I do a lot of accents. Who doesn't do a pirate accent or whatever on occasion? But slipping into one, nah, not so much.
I suspect Jill's never done a pirate accent.
Matey. That's all you're going to get from me today, okay? I said I wasn't going to do it, but Chris Bedford, I love you, so you get it today. Back to some news stuff. We saw that Michael Malice went on Joe Rogan recently and said that despite Kamala's cringe, she can actually win. Take a listen.
She's going to win.
No, she's not.
She can win.
She absolutely can win. I do not think she's going to win because the more she talks, like in 2020, how bad do you have to be that you can't even make Iowa? She couldn't even compete with the mayor of South Bend.
I feel like we are in this very bizarre time where people are giving in to the in a way that I never suspected people would before. And this is one, they just want no Trump no matter what, and they're willing to gaslight themselves to think that. And by the way, I think Hillary could win. If Hillary jumped back in.
I've been saying that for months.
If Hillary jumped back in, I think the problem was also the money because there was like $250 million in the campaign fund that has if it only works if she's on the ticket.
Anyone but Trump, Bedford? What's your take?
That's a real threat. I mean, Donald Trump and Joe Biden are two people who had a huge name recognition. Their personalities, their policy preferences, what it was like to be a citizen of the United States while they were president. All of these things were well known. I mean, Joe Biden was the leader of the free world. Donald Trump was the most famous person in it. Kamala Harris is someone who's less well known. And even though she's infamous on the right-wing internet, and she may be the cool kid on the left-wing internet, to a lot of Americans, she could simply represent an alternative. Now, that's kind of the strategy I assumed that they were going to go with, which is have her open up the Olympics or close it down at least, have her be a delegate, do the Rose Garden kind of strategy, make her seem presidential, have her show up at these speeches. And in some ways, they've done that, where they've really been avoiding interviews. She hasn't been, for example, when Donald Trump came and took hostile questions in Chicago from the Black Journalists Convention, Kamala Harris couldn't clear the time in her schedule to do so. She's avoiding a lot of these questions where she's able to. She's not good at being interviewed. But strangely enough, as opposed to just trying to appear presidential, and we were talking about this last night, she's been pushing so much of the left-wing stuff. She's been doing these weird segregated by race, sexuality, and gender fundraisers online. She's been basically, I don't think there's more gay events in the last week that she's attended than I knew existed in the United States, at least on the last week's calendar. She hasn't pulled back at all or tried to moderate or tried to appear presidential, and she will be her own worst enemy on the campaign trail.
Yeah, Chris, I mean, I go back and forth on this myself, bubble or not. I think she is living in a bubble right now, but we are in a 40% versus 40% floor divided country. And on that note, something that certainly actually worries me, and that's the VP pick. We're looking at, we're going to know this soon, Tuesday, and a lot of people are speculating it will be Governor Shapiro, since she's in Philadelphia. Any thoughts about this?
Yeah, Governor Shapiro is someone who will be interesting to see. He's fashioned himself as somewhat more of a populist, moderate Democrat in Pennsylvania, which is a state where Kamala Harris has done zero work to really shore up the vote, essentially, at least with her policies. He could be formidable. But of course, I mean, there's just the reality that he's bad for her in Michigan. Democrats are counting in Michigan on a large vote of Muslim immigrants who do not care for a guy who's named Shapiro. There's one of the biggest problems Democrats already have is the war in Israel, which is now threatening to escalate to war with Iran and war with Lebanon just in time for the election, which is Democrats' worst nightmare for a presidential election, at least as far as Michigan goes. That'll be an issue. I mean, not that many people usually vote on a VP. They don't bring anything to the ticket. I think the really noteworthy alternative to this is Donald Trump, who, when he selected Mike Pence, probably in a point of weakness, it helped bridge the gap with evangelicals and traditional movement conservatives who were suspicious of him. Now, Trump's VP pick will open him up to some criticism for past remarks. is someone who continues the ideals of MAGA, but no one's going to add their vote because of that. The same people who J.D. Vance really appeals to in the Rust Belt and what they call it the Blue Wall are people that Donald Trump already appealed to. The same thing will be true of Shapiro, but I do think the Michigan problem would put them in peril.
I'm glad you mentioned that. It should be brought up more. People won't want to talk about the quote-unquote Michigan problem as we move forward if she does, in fact, pick Shapiro. I think this is a smart pick. I'm actually disappointed by it because I think it is an intelligent pick. She needs Pennsylvania. He can appear as moderate in many ways, and I think it makes sense, sadly, Jill.
You know, when you look at it, Chris Bedford, we're going to be missing you because you're going to be gone on vacation, and we'll just have to break down all this news cycle without you. So have a great time away. We've enjoyed the time that we've had here today, though.
Hopefully you won't have to use the Boston accent.
And as Chris,
I hope not, but we'll see.
And as Bedford said, the events in the Middle East could escalate into World War III. We will break that all down when we get back. Hamas alleges that an Israeli airstrike in Iran killed one of their leaders, Haniyeh, intensifying the tension and hysteria in the midst of a 9-month-long war. In retaliation for his death, Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, issued an order for Iran to strike Israel directly. And this order came at an emergency meeting of Iran's Supreme National Security Council earlier this morning. Now, here to unpack all of this is Jason Buttrill, U.S. Marine and former intelligence analyst and Department of Defense, also the head writer and researcher for Glenn Beck. So, Jason, is the world going to enter into World War III? Is this an overreaction? What are we dealing with actually on the ground right now?
A significant escalation for sure. The last 48 hours-ish or so have kind of seemed like, you know, the ending of the movie The Departed, where all of a sudden all these people are just getting offed and you're like, whoa, I didn't see that one coming. Whoa, another one happened? Are you kidding me? Another guy got killed? I mean, the Hezbollah number 3 targeted kill was big. Israel has lost a war with Hezbollah recently. So that's, you know, pretty considerable when you think about where that's going to lead. But now striking inside Iran, in Tehran, to kill the chief political officer of Hamas is huge. It's largely symbolic, but the fact that they did this in Tehran is absolutely nuts. For one, that's a heck of a message to send to Iran. They can't keep anyone safe. If you're, I mean, just think about that. They're constantly under air surveillance. Their radar is up figuratively all the time. And somehow Israel was able to fly in a projectile and kill this guy with pinpoint accuracy. It's pretty amazing. But when you look at where this is going, Iran is a little bit different animal when you think about geopolitical foes out there. I think that they are religiously psychotic. I don't fear a nuclear attack from a nation state like Russia. They're not stupid and they're not crazy. But I think actors like Iran and North Korea are. So I think that what they've been looking forward to or looking towards is eventually an encirclement of all of Israel. And they're building that. They've got Hamas from Gaza. They've got Hezbollah from Lebanon. They have the IRGC moving in from Syria. The encirclement, and that's many of their clerics have talked about that encirclement of Jerusalem recently, is almost complete. So now Iran is just looking to, when do we pull that trigger? That's coming. That's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when that's going to happen. Israel knows this as well. That's why they're not screwing around. They're taking out the people that, from these, from their proxies, whether it's the Houthis or whatever. That's constantly happening. So what I'm most concerned with now is I already know it's going to escalate. This is going to escalate. What I'm more concerned with now is how does it escalate? Does it end with a blockade of the Straits of Hormuz and the other strait? I can't remember the one that goes into the Red Sea. Does it happen with that? Because then the United States directly has an interest there. Then we get directly involved, and this goes way out of bounds really fast.
Again, we don't know how quickly that's going to escalate, but with the people that are in power right now, right? I don't see this really going past November and then January when they could potentially have a change of power in the United States. So how do you see this playing out with the leaders that we currently have, with all that is entailed around that? How does that play out from the United States perspective?
Jill, they handled Afghanistan masterfully well. Like, why would you even question that?
Yeah.
We have clowns in the White House. We have clowns within the leadership of the entire Democratic Party. We have clowns that they have installed as their, political heads within the U.S. military. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin being one of the big ones. They're just political puppets right now, and the fear that I have with them is that, for one, they don't really seem to think that often. But when they do have a random thought in their head, it's usually just to go guns blazing and to draw us as quickly as possible into whatever conflict they can think of, which is not how we should be looking at this situation at all right now. Israel holds all the cards right now. And however they feel like they'll best defend their nation and their people, because these attacks are not stopping. Hezbollah just bombed a playground and killed a bunch of kids. For crying out loud. Like, they don't care. And it almost seems like they're more than willing to let this escalate. And that's another danger sign. Why are they so willing to let this escalate? That's what Iran wants. That's their end game. So I think the scary thing about this is we see this develop. And I'm sure a lot of people right now are saying, look, we've seen this happen in the past. Like, these things happen, airstrike or two, these things calm down. But the intensity of everything happening right now, how bad October 7th was, and then the war in Gaza, and it's still going on. It's nowhere near ending. The war in Lebanon with Hezbollah is only just now starting. Where does this end? A lot more U.S. involvement, probably, sadly.
So one thing that I can't wrap my head around is these two kind of competing forces here. One is we came in and wrapped our arms around Israel with love to slow everything down, right? I mean, it's like, we're going to come in and we're going to help you, but we're going to slow you down. We don't want you to escalate, really, right? And then there's this other division between those who want Israel as our main partner and others who think we need to expand and be friendly with Iran itself, right? So, I mean, that goes back to the Obama era. So it almost as if we're canceling ourselves out of this, and it's just escalating anyway? Or how do you see all these opposing forces?
I mean, these things get complicated, right? Especially when you look at, geopolitics and foreign policy in general, when you have, people that stop being realists in geopolitics and they start playing kind of like the morality angle of it. And there's two different wings of it. You could call it faux morality, because I don't think the Obama administration was thinking morality when they had this amazing idea that somehow if we gave them tons and tons of money and stopped treating a terrorist regime as terrorists, then somehow things would work out okay. Like, they would balance Iraq, the entire Middle East would just be balanced. Well, Iran was ISIS long before ISIS declared a caliphate. This caliphate was a terrorist regime. That's the exact same thing that the mullahs did in Iran. They were terrorists that seized a country. That's how they should be treated. Pandering to them created the chaos that we are seeing right now. So when you fail to treat a scenario or situation like this how it's supposed to be treated, you end up with what we have right now. I really don't see that changing. And you see that every time. I mean, look at the Biden administration. Look how conflicted they are. They don't know whether to support Netanyahu one day, or after all the universities start erupting, opposing him the next day. They don't even know what the hell they're doing on it. Doesn't bode well for us in the next few months. My hope is that somehow Trump can get into office, work some kind of deal, and slow a lot of this stuff down. But it's going to have to focus on treating Iran as the terrorists they are. Treat them as they are, get the entire world to treat them as they are, and maybe we won't have Iranian ships blockading the two major, oilways in the world. Let's hope that doesn't happen.
And maybe the next time we have you back, Jason, maybe we can have some good news on the show. How about that?
Right? Every time, Jill.
That's the way that it goes. But we will take a hard left turn, because our next guest will tell you how to get the most out of your investment from your car. News that you need to know coming up next. In Joe Biden's economy, we're all looking for ways to preserve our bank accounts. And one way to do that is to boost your card's trade-in value. And here to take us through the 6 steps on how to do just that is Lauren Fix, automotive expert. And Lauren, you wrote this article on a line. So let us know, how do car owners get the most out of their used vehicles?
Well, a lot of times it makes sense to keep the vehicle you have, but then people think, you know what, it's getting old. I've got more expenses than it needs to be done. And so I tell people to do their homework. I know no one likes to hear that, but that means find out its current value. You can use websites like cars.com or Auto Trader. There's a bunch of different websites you can go and find out. Kelley Blue Book, find out what the value of your vehicle is. Once you figure that out, you can make at least an assessment to say, geez, this is going to be enough for me to get a new vehicle or not. So that's like the number one thing I always tell people: do your homework, and then take care of those known mechanical issues. If the delay was because you thought, well, you know, the costs are going to be a lot, should I trade in this vehicle? I always tell people, here's the rule of thumb. It's not even in the article, so I'll give you an extra tip. The extra tip is, if the repairs are more than the value of the car, repair what you can and sell that vehicle. Never invest more in a vehicle than it's worth. So you wouldn't want to put $10,000 into a $5,000 car because you're never going to get your money out of it. So, but if there's little things like check engine lights, or geez, it needs tires, you know, I know it needs some basic maintenance and an oil change, do all that before the trade-in, and then keep those receipts. It's really important. And that'll give you a better trade-in value as well. And then make sure it looks its best. That's really important. Like you were selling your home, you'd want to stage your home. In this case, you want to stage your car. So think of it like curb appeal. You would put like fresh flowers out if you were selling your house. And in this case, you want to clean the garbage out of the center console, out of the glove box, you know, things out of the door. Make it look like the car is always kept neat and clean. And all of that will definitely increase your resale value, because any dealer that's looking to purchase this car is going to say, wow, this car is really clean. We don't have to do much to it. We should put it on the lot and sell it right away. And that's a huge value boost to you, because if they don't have to put money into it, whether it be cars, whether it be maintenance or cleaning it, that means that you'll get more money. And all of that will definitely boost your trade-in value or your sale value. And that's part of some more tips. You know, shop around for that trade-in value. A lot of times you'll be looking for a new vehicle. You always want to keep the deal separate. So when they ask you, are you trading in a vehicle? Say, I'm not sure yet. Make the deal on the vehicle you want. Keep it a clean, separate deal. Then say, I do have a trade-in. Can you give me your best price? Now they will, and you will get the sales tax credit, and that's really important. So if the car that you're trading in is $10,000, you'll get $10,000 of credit in sales tax toward your newest vehicle. Now, if you're leasing, that won't necessarily apply, but if you're purchasing a vehicle, it does. So if that's not the case, you can always shop it around online. There's plenty of places that will buy your vehicle. CarMax will buy it. There's a bunch of other places you can look online to sell the car to them. They'll just purchase it outright and write you a check. That is also a great option. Also, negotiate that car trade-in value separately. So when you do, you can say, now I've got the purchase of the vehicle and the purchase of the car. If you try to do it all together, they'll try to bundle it all in one, and you are getting shortchanged. Happens a lot. They'll say, well, we'll take your trade-in, and then we'll give you like wholesale for your trade-in, but you're paying retail for the car. That's why you always want to do that separately. You'll save money and you'll get the best value, because obviously you don't want to find yourself in a difficult position. Also, never trade in a vehicle that's what we call upside down in our business. That means you owe more on it than it's worth. So just keeping with that $10,000 value, just because it's a simple number. If your car is worth $10,000, but you owe $15,000 on it, keep the vehicle, repair it, maintain it as best you can until you're at least down to equal to its resale value. You never want to owe more on it, because what they'll do is they'll say, oh, we got you covered. We'll pay it off. Sure, but they're rolling that a dollar amount into your next vehicle. And that's where you'll end up paying for that vehicle years down the road, and you'll never get out from underneath the previous vehicle. So, and it can roll on and on and on into the next vehicle. So find yourself paying that off, or at least paying it down as much as possible. And there's ways to pay it down early by making double payments. Paying an extra $100 a month will also help pay off that vehicle as quick as possible. And then the last thing is your trade-in value. You never want to trade in a convertible in the middle of winter, or a 4x4 in the middle of summer, because during the fall, people are starting thinking, you know what, I could use an all-wheel drive vehicle. I'm in snow if you live in the upper half of the country. What a great time to trade in a 4x4 and all-wheel drive, because they know customers are coming in looking for it. Just like in the spring, you would be looking for a convertible, which you wouldn't in the middle of winter. What a great way to get a deal for the next customer, because the dealer who's buying it is always looking at who's going to buy it and when they're going to buy it. And that's also true when you're going to buy a new vehicle. Remember that at the end of the month, that's when they're the most negotiable. You know, the 29, 30, 31st, they want to make a deal because the first of the month rolls around and that's when things change. They paid what they call floor planning or the financing on that vehicle, and then they're not going to want to negotiate till the end of the month. So anytime you buy a car early in the month, you're not going to get your best deal. You're going to get your best deals at the end of the month where they're very negotiable, and you'll be surprised. They will not let you walk out of the dealer. They'll want to make that deal happen.
Lauren, I am in this boat. You are actually talking to me right now. I didn't even plan this segment, but I feel like I got so much free life advice here on this. So a personal thank you to me, from me to you. Now, what if somebody doesn't follow any of these steps? How much money could they be leaving on the table? We have about 60 seconds left.
Believe it or not, between 10 and 15% of the value of the vehicle.
Wow.
So again, if you don't stage your car, you don't clean it out, you take the stuff out of the trunk, all that's huge. Wash the car, wax the car, save the receipts. And when you come and say, here's the receipts for my vehicle, I've been maintaining it, I'm getting it inspected, anything that's broken, I get it repaired. I promise you, any dealer is going to say, wow, I'm really impressed. And they'll give you a good offer. And then when you shop it around and you see who's got the best price, whether it be a used car, new car lot, you're going to find that you're going to have a lot of offers on a nice, clean vehicle that people want to turn around and resell.
Lauren Fix clearly knows her stuff. Thanks so much for joining us today, Lauren.
Thank you.
And Matthew, I mean, could we ask for a better way to end this show? This is actual life advice, and I am the one that needs it right now. So I know that there are other people out there too.
I mean, in this economy, used cars, given their price, I mean, both a blessing and a curse. That was news you can use.
Absolutely. And for more news you can use, be sure to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast platform. Don't forget to rate and review the show. It helps others discover it. And we love the 5-star reviews. And you know what? We're going to have as much more crazy news tomorrow as there has been today, because that's just the news cycle. And we'll be back here to break it all down for you.